Chapter 1. I am pregnant in our third wedding anniversary. I found out I was pregnant. For this special day, I carefully hid the ultrasound report inside the gift I had lovingly prepared for my husband, Richard. I wanted to surprise him. But as the night dragged on, Richard still hadn't shown up. Then, I received a photo from an unknown number. In the photo, my husband, Richard Blackwood, was gazing tenderly at another woman. The smile on his face was one I didn't recognize. That kind of tenderness. It was something I had never seen from him before. The woman in the shot had a lovely pink diamond bracelet. Unfortunately, I had recently seen that bracelet in the news. According to reports, Richard, the chief executive officer, CEO of Luxor Group, paid $2 million to win the pink diamond bracelet at an auction. I had foolishly hoped that he would buy the bracelet for me as an anniversary gift. A terrible pain gripped my chest, as if an invisible hand were squeezing my heart and gradually tearing it apart. Who sent that photo? And who's the woman in it? The image was too blurry for me to make out her face. Another message came through from an unknown number. He doesn't belong to you. I jumped to my feet and anxiously stared out the window. Richard still hadn't returned. Late at night, a Bugatti Veyron came into the garage. Standing by the window, I watched the tall, handsome man in his custom-tailored gray suit. My mind was spinning with thoughts of the photo. I couldn't deny that Richard, looking like this, was incredibly charming. "You're still up this late?" Richard turned on the lights and appeared shocked to discover me seated in the dining room. I slowly stood up, my throat tight. After a long pause, I finally said, "I was waiting for you to come home. I've been working late a lot lately. Why wait up for me? It's getting colder at night. Don't catch a cold." Richard walked over to me, his concerned tone making my emotions turn to the outside world. We were the perfect couple. Everyone said that he loved me endlessly. Richard wrapped his arms around me and kissed my cheek gently. "Sophia, I missed you." Then he noticed the spread of now cold food on the table. Surprised, he asked, "Why did you make so much? Today is our third anniversary." I smiled slightly, but then I caught a whiff of women's perfume on him. My nose stung, and I fought back tears, trying to maintain my composure. "I apologize. I've been so busy recently that I completely overlooked something so crucial." Richard's expression hardened as he nervously apologized. My heart sank with bitterness, and I blurted, "You're lying. You were planning to surprise me, right? That pink diamond bracelet. You bought it for me, didn't you?" "What bracelet?" Richard looked perplexed. "The $2 million pink diamond bracelet. You won it at the auction. I saw it in the news." I smiled at him, hoping against hope. I thought that if he just pulled out that bracelet, I could pretend I hadn't seen the photo. Pretend none of this had ever happened. "Oh, that bracelet. No, I didn't win it. I just accompanied James to the auction. It must have been a mistake by the media." Richard's expression didn't change as he spoke. "I'm sorry, Sophia. I'll make it up to you for missing our anniversary, Dodd. Is there anything you want? I think that pink diamond bracelet is beautiful." I didn't know why, but I was fixated on that bracelet. Maybe it was because the image of the woman wearing it, with Richard gazing at her so tenderly, was too painful. If Richard had handed her that pricey jewelry, what type of relationship did they have? I was terrified to think about it. But James bought it. He probably gave it to one of his girlfriends. Richard sighed helplessly. "All right, if you like it that much, I'll ask him about it tomorrow. It's just a bracelet, nothing special. I'll get you something even better next time." He lifted me onto the dining table, pushed the dishes aside, and leaned in to kiss my neck. "It's our anniversary. I shouldn't have neglected you." His deep, husky voice sent shivers down my spine. My heart clenched. And suddenly I wanted to ask him if he was lying to me. Had he really given that bracelet to another woman? But I had no idea where to start. Maybe I was just too scared to ask, afraid the truth would ruin me. Before I could respond, Richard raised my skirt and placed his fingers to the most sensitive areas between my thighs. Sophia, this is what you want, isn't it? Your body doesn't lie. He teased my sensitive spots, making my body go limp, my breaths coming in quick gasps. As Richard kissed me passionately, undressing me, I suddenly remembered something important. We're having a baby, and he doesn't know yet. Richard, I bit my lip, trying to say something, but then he kissed my chest. A surge of great pleasure flooded over me, and I arched my back in response. Chapter 2. My husband, my decaic babe. You're so passionate. Richard chuckled softly, leaving a trail of deep red marks across my chest. I closed my eyes, lost in a haze of pleasure. All rational thoughts had fled my mind, and I was completely overcome by the sensations. Sophia, you're so beautiful. With an intense gaze, he stripped away the rest of my clothing, admiring my naked body. You made it impossible for me to stay in control. The thought of lying completely exposed on the dining table, vulnerable to his every move, made my cheeks burn with embarrassment. Richard leaned down to kiss me again, his tongue forcefully invading my mouth. I stifled my moans, my chest heaving with each breath. Just as things were heating up, a thought suddenly struck me, and I grabbed his arm, shaking my head. I'm sorry. I'm not feeling well. We need to stop. Earlier that day, I had seen the doctor, who had reminded me that I was just over a month pregnant and that the baby was still fragile. The doctor also advised against any sexual activity for the time being to prevent complications. What's wrong? Richard stopped immediately, gently stroking my hair. Where do you feel unwell? It's never easy to stop in the middle of something like that. I'm just a little tired. I need to rest. After a moment of hesitation, I decided not to tell him about the baby yet. I planned to tell him everything after I resolved the matter with the pink diamond jewelry. If he wasn't cheating, then we could be happy together with our children forever. But if he really was seeing another woman, then he wouldn't deserve to be a father. I'm sorry, I wasn't thinking. Richard's face was full of guilt as he gently dressed me and carried me to a chair. You waited for me all this time without eating, didn't you? Are you hungry? Not really, I said, shaking my head softly. In truth, I had lost my appetite after waiting so long. The food's cold. I'll make us something light. He stood up, adjusting his suit back to its usual impeccable state, looking every bit the dignified man who was hard to take your eyes off. As I watched him busy himself in the kitchen, I couldn't shake the image of him cooking for another woman from my mind. The thought nearly drove me mad, and I took a deep breath. Sophia, don't jump to conclusions. Maybe it's all just a misunderstanding, I told myself. Richard prepared a plate of pasta and a bowl of mushroom soup. His cooking was surprisingly good, and I realized I hadn't eaten much of anything he'd made before. A guy of his size eager to cook for me. Shouldn't I have been moved? But that photo kept replaying in my mind. The tender smile on Richard's face and the pink diamond bracelet on the woman's wrist, haunting me like a nightmare, making it hard to breathe. Happy anniversary. Richard clinked his glasses with mine, a loving smile on his handsome face. Sophia, I'm so lucky to have you as my wife. Happy anniversary, darling. I smiled back at him, chatting like we always did. But the juice tasted bitter as it went down. I had a feeling that the photos and the messages weren't as simple as they seemed. Was that woman trying to provoke me? Was she trying to tell me that my husband belonged to her? My thinking was cloudy and preoccupied. After a quiet supper with Richard, I cleared the plates and went into the bedroom. Richard approached from behind me, throwing his arms around me and nuzzling my neck. It's our anniversary. I want to make love to you. He nibbled on my earlobe, and I gasped, grabbing his hand as it roamed my body. My voice trembled as I said, our anniversary is over. It's 4 a.m. He forced a smile and headed for the restroom. Sophia, you are too tired tonight. I'll make it up to you another time. I watched him walk away, then picked up my phone to look at the photos from the unknown number again, my heart heavy with anxiety. That night, I laid beside Richard, but I couldn't sleep at all. Once a seed of doubt is planted, it's hard to erase. The thought my husband might be cheating on me kept spinning in my mind, causing me unbearable pain. The next morning, I woke up early. As I came out of the bedroom and reached the stairs, the housekeeper, Mary, greeted me with a smile. "Mrs. Blackwood, we have a special guest today." A special guest? I was surprised for a second. "It's Miss Susan," Mary explained. I followed her gaze and saw Susan Blackwood sitting on the living room sofa. She was dressed in a light blue gown, looking pure and elegant, her beauty captivating. I nodded and was about to say something when I noticed something that made my blood run cold. Susan was wearing a pink diamond bracelet. It was the same bracelet as the one seen in the photo. I stood frozen, feeling like the blood in my veins had turned to ice. How could Susan be wearing that bracelet? She was Richard's stepmother's daughter, a little older than him. Although they weren't related by blood, she was still his stepsister by name. I recalled the tender smile on Richard's face in the photo, and suddenly my vision blacked out. My legs gave way, and I nearly collapsed on the spot. Chapter 3. Richard. "You lied to me, Sophia." Richard suddenly appeared, catching me as I nearly collapsed. I fell into his arms, leaning against his warm chest, but I felt cold all over. "What's wrong?" "You look pale." He looked at me with concern, the kind of gaze that would convince anyone he was a loving husband devoted to his wife. "I'm fine. Susan is here, so I should go down and greet her. We can't neglect our guests." I forced a smile, trying to maintain my composure. "Aren't you feeling well? You should rest and let me handle this. I'll go instead." Richard frowned and told Mary to call the family doctor. He hurried towards the living room, his behavior only deepening my unease. Was he trying to keep me from seeing Susan? Was it because of that pink diamond bracelet? Was he feeling guilty? If I hadn't received the snapshot, I might not have been suspicious. But now I couldn't convince myself there was nothing between Richard and Susan. "Mary, don't call the doctor. I'm fine." The more I thought about it, the more anxious I became, unable to help myself. I hurried towards the living room. There, I found my husband kneeling on the floor, gently massaging Susan's ankle. "Does it still hurt?" Richard inquired softly. "It's much better now. You're pretty good at this," Susan teased with a smile. The concern on Richard's face made me wonder if Susan had some kind of incurable illness. But wasn't she sitting perfectly fine on the sofa? Susan noticed me first and pushed Richard aside, greeting me with a calm smile. "Sophia, you're here. I'm sorry. I twisted my ankle earlier, and Richard was just helping me out." Richard turned to look at me as well, a flicker of panic and unease crossing his face before he quickly composed himself. Susan hurt her feet. "Don't get the wrong idea. I haven't said anything." "Why do you think I get the wrong idea?" I said with a scoff. "Susan is your stepsister. Of course, you should look after each other." Richard's expression froze, and he scolded Susan, "Next time, be more careful. How do you even manage to twist your ankle while walking?" "Sorry, it won't happen again." Susan lowered her head, her tone heavy with resentment. "You're always like this, acting like a child despite your age." Richard sighed, giving Susan a helpless look before walking over to me. He took my hand gently and said, "You're not feeling well. You should rest." "I'm fine, Dot. It's rare for Susan to visit." I discreetly pulled my hand away, feeling uncomfortable at the thought of him having just massaged Susan's ankle. "Susan, that bracelet is stunning. I saw the news about the pink diamonds. It cost $1 million, didn't it?" I glanced at the bracelet on Susan's wrist. Richard was ashamed and was ready to say something when Susan interrupted him. "This bracelet was purchased by Richard. It was meant to be yours, Sophia." Susan quietly removed the jewelry, her face peaceful. She handed me the bracelet with a smile. "I shouldn't have accepted such an expensive gift from Richard, since you seem to like it. So why don't you take it?" She appeared to be understanding. But when our gazes connected, I noticed a flicker of provocation and satisfaction in her eyes. How ironic. My spouse gave another woman the gift I had longed for. Now she was returning it to me as if she didn't care. Perhaps Richard had given her so many gifts that this bracelet was the least important of them all. I looked at the dazzling pink diamond bracelet, my throat tightening with bitterness. For a moment, I was speechless. Sophia, do you like the bracelet? Let me put it on for you. Richard's voice broke the tension as he gently tried to fasten the bracelet around my wrist. But I stopped him, looking at him coolly. There's no need. I turned and went to our bedroom. Staying here for even a second longer felt like suffocation. What exactly was the relationship between Susan and Richard? If there was something between them, then what did that make me? Why did Richard marry me at all? Stumbling, I made my way upstairs to our bedroom. Just as I reached the door, Richard caught up with me. He grabbed my wrist and pinned me against the wall. Sophia, are you upset? Shouldn't I be? I laughed bitterly, feeling as though all the strength was draining from my body. Richard, you've been lying to me. That bracelet, it was obviously purchased by you. Not only that, you handed it to Susan. What am I to you? I nearly choked on the words, my voice shaking and tears welling up in my eyes. Chapter for Yeremi Li-Fi had always been reserved and composed around Richard. But today I completely lost control. It seemed to have startled him as well. He hurriedly pulled me into his arms, kissing my cheeks. You are my wife, Sophia. You are my only wife. But you lied to me, Richard. Honesty is essential in a marriage. Deception is the last thing we need. I sniffed, trying to hold back the tears that were about to fall. If things between him and Susan were truly innocent, there would have been no need for deception. The photo and message came from an unknown number. Everything pointed to one thing. Susan and Richard's relationship was everything but uncomplicated. I'm sorry, Sophia, Richard admitted, dropping his head in frustration. I kept it from you because I was afraid you'd misunderstand and get jealous. Susan recently went through a difficult emotional time. She divorced. I gave her the bracelet just to console her. I only saw her as family, nothing more. His explanation was earnest, but I was unsure whether I could believe him. A woman's intuition is often accurate. Today in the living room, I sensed something was wrong between them. It was almost laughable. They didn't seem like family at all. They looked like lovers. I began, wanting to ask more. But Richard pressed me against the wall and kissed me. He wrapped one hand around my waist and the other behind my head, deepening the kiss. I tried to resist, but he pried my lips open, his tongue tangling with mine in a fervent dance. Richard was an expert at kissing. His intensity overwhelmed me, leaving me defenseless. When he finally backed away, I was leaning heavily against the wall, breathing hard. My legs are quivering and weak. Sophia, trust me, please. Richard whispered softly in my ear. Susan is my stepmother's daughter. My father always told me to take good care of her. And besides, you know how much I owe to Susan's mother. His eyes were filled with sincerity, and I found myself staring into them for a long moment before I finally nodded. For the baby's sake, trust him one more time, Sophia. After all, Susan is indeed his stepsister. Although they aren't related by blood, they are still family in name. Susan has already departed. I'll see her less from now on. Richard replied, handing me the pink diamond bracelet. Since you like it, keep it. I'll get you anything you want. How does that sound? I grasped the jewelry and nodded slightly. Maybe I was being overly sensitive. Richard always treated me kindly, and after all, I'd been secretly in love with him for years. How fortunate I was to marry the person I had longed for. I placed a hand on my abdomen, suddenly remembering that Richard didn't know about the baby yet. I had hidden the ultrasound report in the gift I prepared for him for our anniversary, hoping to surprise him, but he still hadn't opened it. I sighed, deciding to go to the hospital for a checkup in a few days and then tell Richard about the pregnancy. Of course, That was only if he remained faithful to our marriage. But I didn't expect that before I could tell him everything, another twist of fate would hit us. That day, it was Richard's grandfather's birthday. He was taking me back to the family estate for Henry's birthday celebration. In the late afternoon, I finished work early and waited at the company entrance. I worked at Richard's company, Luxor Group, and my performance over the years had been excellent. Luxor Group was a prestigious company, and I had always been diligent, never letting my marriage to Richard affect my work ethic. A luxurious Bugatti Veyron pulled up in front of me, and Richard got out of the car, naturally taking the bag from my hand. "Sorry for making you wait, Sophia." He hugged me and kissed my cheek. I couldn't deny that I craved his embrace. Being with him always made my heart flutter. We chatted and laughed as I approached the car. Just as I was about to open the door, I noticed Susan sitting in the passenger seat, smiling at me. My smile instantly faded. "Susan," I looked at her in shock. Chapter 5 Hackeras about soon lit the past. I would not have been bothered if Susan appeared unexpectedly in my husband's automobile. However, given what had transpired, I couldn't help but care. Moreover, Susan was sitting in my seat, the seat Richard had once said was reserved only for his wife. We're all on our way to Grandpa's birthday party. My car had a minor problem, so Richard offered me a lift. Susan said with an innocent smile, "Sophia, you and Richard seem to have such a strong relationship, and you're so understanding. I'm sure you don't mind, do you?" I opened my mouth, wanting to say that I did mind, but in the end, I said nothing. If I admitted it, I'd look petty and jealous. After all, she was just Richard's sister, wasn't she? "Jack, go get the car," Richard instructed, handing the car's keys to his driver, Jack, before leading me to the back seat. Jack drove us towards the family estate. Richard held my hand as we sat together, but neither of us spoke. Susan looked back at us, her expression darkening when she saw us holding hands. She quickly looked away and broke the silence. "Sophia, why are you wearing that bracelet?" "I'm tired of it," I replied calmly. "People always get bored of old things. It's just a bracelet." "Richard spent $1 million on that bracelet," she said abruptly. I let out a quiet laugh. Was she trying to remind me that Richard had spent a fortune on such an extravagant gift for her? For a brief moment, I considered asking her if she had sent me the photos and notes anonymously that day. $2 million is nothing to Richard, I replied dismissively. "A small amount," Richard echoed at the right moment. "Next time, I'll get you something even more expensive, Sophia." It seems the rumors are true. Richard spoils his wife to the extreme. Susan forced a laugh, but I could hear the bitterness in her voice. It seemed that Richard was defending me this time, but I didn't feel relieved, because I could see it clearly. Susan's feelings for him were obviously not those of a sister. My instincts told me that what awaited me was a storm that had been brewing for a long time. I didn't speak again, but Susan continued chatting with Richard from time to time. "Richard, remember when I was obsessed with strawberry ice cream? But my favorite shop was miles away, and the lines were always long. You ran several blocks and waited in line for hours. By the time you brought it back, it had already melted." Susan covered her mouth as she laughed, and to my dismay, Richard joined in. I felt like I had fallen into an icy void, the scene before me too harsh, their laughter too jarring. Richard must have sensed my discomfort because he quickly stopped, tightening his grip on my hand. That was in the past. No point in bringing it up. "Sorry, Sophia, I didn't mean anything by it. Just reminiscing." Susan quickly apologized. "That's just how she is. She says things without thinking," Richard added, trying to ease the tension. I wasn't sure what expression to wear. Their words made me feel like I was pounding cotton, completely powerless. I remained muted, pulling my hand free of Richard's clutches. After all, had this hand not once held Susan's? No matter how many times he insisted that there was nothing between them. The recent events made it impossible for me to believe him, I could no longer deceive myself. Richard had never run several blocks or waited in line for hours just to get me ice cream. I always thought only couples deeply in love did that. It turned out that the unattainable moon I had longed for had perhaps already been plucked by someone else. The car drove into the family estate, winding through a garden filled with expensive flowers and plants. Before stopping in front of the grand main building, the butler personally came to greet us. Just as I stepped out of the car, I heard Susan crying out and saw her about to collapse to the ground. Richard rushed over almost instantly to catch her. She leaned into Richard's chest, crying out in pain, and gave me a significant glance. It was clear to me Richard had rushed over instantly, his reaction seeming more like a reflex. This was his most genuine response. He cared about Susan. He cared deeply. "What happened?" Richard asked, helping Susan up, his tone slightly reproachful. "My ankle from last time. I think I twisted it again just now." Susan whimpered, looking up at him with tear-filled eyes. I couldn't bear to watch no longer. I turned away, silently clenching my fists, letting my nails dig into my palms. Chapter 6. They see more liqueurs absurd. They looked like a pair of lovers deeply in love. Well, I, the wife in name, seemed like nothing more than an outsider. How do you manage to twist your ankle just from walking or getting out of a car? Richard's voice carried over to me, laced with both reproach and undeniable affection. Suddenly, it felt as if the years of our marriage were nothing but a complete joke. I never realized how much he cared for Susan. If she was the one he truly loved, why did he marry me? I'll be more careful next time. Susan's voice chimed in, almost in a coquettish tone. Even the butler and the driver seemed to pick up on the tension, quickly ushering me into the main house and guiding me to the living room. The spacious living room was filled with members of the Blackwood family. Richard's grandfather, Henry Blackwood, spotted me and waved me over. "Come and sit, Sophia." "Where's Richard?" Susan heard her feet, and he's personally tending to her. "I didn't want to disturb them," I replied, unable to resist adding a touch of sarcasm to my words. Susan's injury might not have been serious, but it seemed only Richard could be her doctor. My words caused a noticeable shift in the expressions of everyone present. I wondered if perhaps they, too, knew something about the situation between Susan and Richard that I didn't. Maybe I was the only fool here, completely in the dark. "This is unacceptable." Henry slammed his cane against the floor. "Sophia, has Richard been mistreating you? You must tell me if he ever dares to hurt you. I'll stand up for you." His worried look made my throat tighten. I knew Henry cared for me and had always treated me well. Without him, Richard and I might never have made it this far. "It's nothing, Grandpa," I said, shaking my head. "Richard and I are doing fine. Don't worry about us." The old man's health wasn't the best, and I couldn't bear to make him worry. "Is Susan hurt? Is it serious?" Richard's father, William Blackwood, asked, his face filled with concern. He was Susan's stepfather and was said to treat her as his own daughter. "Not serious, Father," Susan's voice suddenly cut in, and I looked up to see her limping over with Richard's support. When Richard saw me, he quickly let go of Susan, and William immediately stepped in to help her to a seat. "Richard, you really are foolish. Why aren't you with your wife? What are you doing with Susan?" Henry scolded, rapping Richard's leg with his cane. Susan was hurt, and Richard stammered. Looking uncertain, he walked over to take my hand, but I pulled away. "It's just a twisted ankle. Does she need to all this fuss?" Henry scoffed, his disdain for Susan evident. "Richard, you need to remember that Sophia is your wife." "Yes, Grandfather, I understand." Richard nodded, looking at me as if wanting to explain. But I didn't look at him. Instead, I walked over to Henry and started chatting with him. "Susan, there's no need for you to attend these family gatherings in the future," Henry said coldly, casting a disdainful glance at Susan. "The Blackwood family doesn't welcome you." Susan's face going rigid, as if she'd been slapped. I knew Henry had never been fond of Susan and didn't want to acknowledge her as a member of the Blackwood family, but I hadn't expected him to humiliate her so openly. Dad, Susan is Grace's daughter. Do you really have to do this? William began trying to speak up for Susan. Grace was William's second wife and Richard's stepmother, and William had always been protective of both Grace and Susan. That's enough. Be quiet. Henry cut him off, then turned to me with a warm smile. Come on, Sophia. Let's go to dinner. The elegantly decorated dining room was filled with a lavish spread of delicacies. The Blackwood family was wealthy, so Henry's birthday parties were always extravagant. I sat next to Henry, chatting and laughing with him, deliberately avoiding looking at Richard. I could feel his gaze on me, but I was too exhausted to engage with him. After dinner, Henry asked Richard to take me for a walk in the garden. We strolled around the garden in silence, neither of us knowing what to say. Perhaps Richard didn't know how to explain himself. Even a blind person could see the tension between him and Susan. Suddenly, Richard's phone rang. He answered it, then turned to me with an apologetic look. I'm sorry, Sophia, but I need to check on Susan. What's wrong with her now? Did she hurt her ankle again? Are you a doctor? Do you think only you can help her? I couldn't hold back my sarcasm any longer. I'm sorry, I'll explain later. Susan really isn't well. Richard's face paled, and with those words, he quickly walked away, leaving me standing there alone. Chapter 7, Divorcing Me for Susan. I watched his figure gradually disappear into the distance, and tears began to flow uncontrollably. With no one around, I no longer had to hide my emotions. Richard, how many times have you abandoned me like this? On our wedding night, you left me alone to sit for hours. The memory of our wedding night has always been a thorn in my side. I still didn't know where Richard went that night or what was so important. Could it have been because of Susan? The more I thought about it, the more sorrowful I became. My lips trembled and tears streamed down my cheeks uncontrollably. A dull ache began in my lower abdomen. Maybe the baby inside me could feel my distress as well. I gently rubbed my belly and said softly, Baby, I'm sorry, but you might end up without a father. If Susan and your father really end up together, I'll divorce him and raise you on my own, okay? The pain in my abdomen eased a bit, but another thought crossed my mind. How hard would it be for a child to grow up without a father? Maybe it would be too cruel for the child. Should I give up on this baby and end everything? I shook my head, wiping the tears from the corners of my eyes. The baby was only a little over a month old, yet I already felt such a strong connection. I couldn't just let go of this child so easily. Maybe it was because this was Richard's child. After all, I had loved him for so many years, quietly and cautiously. They say that unrequited love is a one-person celebration. I would never forget the first time I saw him. That handsome and clean-cut teenager who smiled at me. From that moment on, my gaze could never leave him. During college, I once had a dream where Richard plucked the moon from the sky just for me. What a beautiful, unrequited love it was. Was it really going to end in such a broken and shattered way? I composed myself, putting on a facade of nonchalance, and headed towards the main house. The garden's path was dimly lit, and I walked carefully, mindful of the baby. But as I rounded a corner, I suddenly tripped over a stone hidden in the shadows. I collapsed onto the ground in a heap, and the thought of Richard leaving me made me want to cry my eyes out. Just then, a sharp pain shot through my abdomen. Panic surged within me as I instinctively clutched my belly, the baby, Richard, and my baby. The pain, it was excruciating. The pain hit me like a tidal wave, and I gasped for breath like a fish out of water. In my panic, I fumbled for my phone and dialed Richard's number. Richard, you don't even know I'm pregnant. Please, answer the phone. Come quickly. And save our baby. I called him multiple times, but there was no answer. That was when it hit me. He was with Susan. He was probably with her right now. How could he possibly have time to answer my call? I let out a bitter laugh, and seeing no one around, I forced myself to get up, clutching my abdomen. I staggered towards the main house. Hurry up, I told myself. Just a little longer, and the baby will be saved. If I lost this baby because Richard didn't answer the phone, then I would never forgive him. Richard, is this how we're going to end? My vision darkened, and a buzzing filled my ears. As I struggled to walk, I continued to dial for help on my phone. I was nearly out of my mind, acting purely on instinct to save my child. Suddenly, I heard voices. They appeared to be coming from the gazebo nearby. There was someone here. I spotted a glimmer of hope and wobbled towards the sound dot in the faint moonlight. I saw Susan throwing herself into Richard's arms, crying as if her heart were breaking. She looked so fragile, so pitiful. Richard, I can't take this anymore. Seeing you are so kind to another woman, it's driving me crazy. I've missed you so much. It's like I'm losing my mind. I've already divorced for you. Now, can we start over, please? I was willing to divorce for you, so you'll divorce Sophia for me too, right? Susan spoke as she clung tightly to Richard, gazing at him with desperate longing. Her tearful voice reached my ears, and I stood frozen in place, feeling as if all the blood in my body had turned to ice. Even breathing became increasingly difficult. The pain in my abdomen worsened, and it felt like the poor baby was slipping away from me. I was stunned, unable to believe what I was seeing. Richard, was he really going to divorce me for Susan? Chapter 8, Richard. We might have lost our baby. This is absurd. Absolutely laughable. It hurts. I clutched my abdomen, my brows furrowed, and my voice was barely a whisper. No matter what, the baby was innocent. I couldn't let this child leave me just like that. Richard and Susan still hadn't noticed my presence. I forced myself to suppress the fury and resentment boiling inside me and tried to move forward, to ask Richard for help. Just then, Richard gently pushed Susan away, his voice cold. You chose to marry someone else. What right do you have to say this to me now? Why should I divorce for you? Richard, I know I was wrong back then, but I've realized my mistake now. Just give me one more chance. Just one. Susan stubbornly threw herself into his arms, tears streaming down her face. The way she acted made it seem as though if Richard didn't agree, he was committing some kind of crime. Susan, you need to understand that I'm already married, that my wife is Sophia. Richard rejected her, but there was unmistakable pity in his eyes. He cared about Susan. He felt sorry for her. I let out a bitter laugh. I had secretly loved him for so many years and worked so hard to get to where we are today. But the person he cared about most was still not me. I had always believed that Susan and Richard, despite not being related by blood, were like siblings. Even if they weren't related by blood, they would keep their distance. Moreover, they both had their own partners. It wouldn't matter if Susan didn't understand. But Richard, who's usually so level-headed, should know better than to stay so close to her, unless they were deeply in love, unable to extricate themselves. I stumbled and nearly fell to the ground. Richard finally saw me, and his face went pale as soon as he did. Sophia. Richard shook off Susan's hand and rushed over to me. What are you doing here? Are you feeling unwell? You don't look right. The pain in my abdomen was excruciating. I wanted to scream at him, demand answers, to argue, but I didn't have the strength. Richard, we might have lost our baby. Sophia, a voice called out from behind me. It was my friend Aurora Jones. Aurora ran over, grabbing my hand with concern. So what's wrong? You sent me your location earlier. Did something happen? I tried calling and texting you, but you didn't respond. I was so worried that I followed the location to find you. Thank goodness the guards let me through. That's right out in my panic earlier. I had set my location to Aurora, but I no longer had the energy to explain the situation to her. Aurora, take me away. I don't want to stay here. I managed to squeeze out the words through gritted teeth, forcing myself free from Richard's grip and leaning on Aurora's shoulder. Oh my God, you look terrible. Do you need to go to the hospital? Aurora asked, helping me. Clearly panicked. Susan, you should go. I'll take Sophia to the hospital, Richard said, moving to take me from Aurora, but I pushed his outstretched hands away, forcing myself to speak coldly. Don't touch me. Aurora, let's go. Sophia, Richard seemed to want to follow, but Susan held him back. She's with somebody. Sophia will be fine. She doesn't want to see you right now. Let her calm down first, Susan advised. Richard didn't say anything else, but his eyes stayed glued to me, red and full of worry. Don't follow us. I gave him a cold look before closing my eyes. Aurora helped me out of the garden and drove me to the hospital. I slumped into the cold seat, clutching my abdomen as I finally let my emotions out. Sophia, what on earth happened? What's going on between you and Richard? Aurora inquired, her voice full of urgency as she concentrated on the road. Aurora, please hurry and take me to the nearest hospital. I'm pregnant. I fell earlier, and my stomach is in so much pain. Despite everything Richard had done, I still wanted to keep this baby. From the moment this poor little life came into my body, I had formed an unbreakable bond with it. What? You're pregnant, and you didn't tell me. Damn it. Aurora cursed, slamming down on the accelerator, and the car sped off, finally overwhelmed. I closed my eyes and drifted into unconsciousness. Baby, hold on a little longer. Mommy loves you. Chapter 9, How is the baby? When I woke up again, I found myself lying in a hospital bed. Aurora leaned over, placing a hand on my forehead to check my temperature. I quickly grabbed her hand, my voice trembling with anxiety. The baby, my baby. Don't worry, Aurora said, patting my shoulder to soothe my nerves. The baby's fine, really. Everything's okay, she said with a reassuring smile. The doctor said your emotional stress might affect the baby's development. Luckily, we got to the hospital in time to protect the pregnancy, so the baby is safe. By the way, what's going on? It seems like there's something wrong between you and Richard. After checking repeatedly to make sure the baby was okay, I sighed in relief and told Aurora of what had happened with Richard and Susan. So Susan wants to take your husband? She's trying to get Richard to divorce you for her. That's disgusting. Aurora fumed, her words laced with anger. And Richard, what's his problem? Being all unclear with another woman when he already has a wife. Is he out of his mind? Damn it. And you're pregnant with his child. So what are you going to do now? Aurora asked after venting her frustration, her eyes full of concern as she looked at me. I don't know yet, I admitted, shaking my head. I had to confess, I don't have the courage to divorce Richard immediately. Even now, I still held onto some hope, wishing that there might still be a way to salvage our relationship. Aurora gave me a look of exasperation. You're great in every other way, but you're totally hopeless when it comes to Richard. As soon as you're around him, you lose your head and can't think straight. Her words caused me to drift into a daze, recalling the first time I met Richard. My parents passed away when I was young, and fortunately, some relatives took me in. But living under someone else's roof was always fraught with helplessness. I worked tirelessly at part-time jobs to earn my living expenses, and even fainted at school once during college due to malnutrition. It was Richard who took me to the hospital. When I woke up, I saw that handsome, clean-cut boy standing beside my bed, the sunlight streaming over him and creating a halo around his chiseled face. From that first look, he captured my heart. When he saw I was awake, he just gave a few detached instructions before leaving. I always thought he was a cold person, but later, I frequently found warm food left on my desk at the time. I thought he was just someone with a kind heart, despite his cool demeanor. When you're used to the cold, you can't help but cling to any warmth you find, not wanting to let it go. Aurora's voice pulled me back from my thoughts. Honestly, I never thought Richard was right for you. He's got way too many girls throwing themselves at him. I was silent for a moment. There were many others who wanted to get close to Richard, but only Susan made me uncomfortable. It was the way he looked at Susan that made me feel threatened for the first time. Aurora chattered on for a while longer, then left briefly to get me some nutritious food, making sure I ate it all. She swore up and down that even if I ended things with Richard, she would stay by my side and help me raise the baby. I felt a warmth in my heart. At least, I still had the comfort of friends. Aurora stepped out to take a phone call, and I took out my phone. There were dozens of missed calls, all from Richard. Besides that, there were also countless messages from him, flooding my inbox. I couldn't help but scoff. If he truly cared about me, how could he have left me for Susan? But if he didn't care, why would he bombard me with calls and messages like a madman? As if he were terrified I would leave him? I put down my phone and touched my belly, my mind in complete chaos, baby. What should mommy do? Suddenly, the hospital door swung open. I figured it was Aurora coming back, but I looked up to find Richard standing there instead. His eyes were bloodshot, and he looked totally freaked out. Sophia, I finally found you. Why haven't you been picking up? Richard rushed to my bedside and grabbed my hand, his face full of worry. Are you okay? I was shocked. I never expected him to track me down here. I didn't answer him. Instead, I quietly pulled my hand away, looked him straight in the eyes, took a deep breath, and found the courage to ask, Richard, what's really going on between you and Susan? Richard froze, completely stunned. After what felt like forever, he finally spoke in a low voice. Susan and we almost got together once. My world started spinning, and I nearly collapsed right there in the hospital bed. Are you saying you two dated? I blurted out, suddenly getting worked up. Wasn't Susan his stepsister? This was way too messed up. Chapter 1, Oh, I'm Willing to Divert hesitated again for a while, then slowly said, yes. I was frozen in shock. Was it when you were in college? I choked out, barely able to get the words past the lump in my throat. I remembered that Richard had been my senior in college. Back then, he was brilliant and charismatic, a big shot on campus. At that time, I had a secret crush on him, carefully guarding my feelings. Before I even had a chance to confess, I heard he already liked someone. So it was Susan all along. How ironic that I'm only finding this out now. How do you know about my college days? Richard's jaw dropped as he stared at me in disbelief. I couldn't help but feel a mix of bitter irony and sadness. Richard, we went to the same university. Oh, right, that's true. He let out an awkward laugh. Sorry, I almost forgot. Suddenly, the years I spent cherishing that one-sided love felt like a complete joke. I had adored him for so long during our university days, yet he barely remembered I existed. Perhaps he had never noticed me at all back then. His mind must have been filled with thoughts of Susan. I pressed my lips together, swallowing my bitterness, and asked softly, what about our wedding night? Why did you leave? On our wedding night, my husband abandoned his newlywed wife and left without a word. I was just 23 years old at the time, and I had married the man I had secretly loved for years through a twist of fate. I had high aspiration for our marriage, only to be met with a cold dose of reality on our first night together. Richard was upfront this time. He admitted she had a car accident that night. The police called me to pick her up. Fortunately, she wasn't seriously injured. I couldn't quite put my feelings into words. Was it just a coincidence? She had an accident on our wedding night. Was it truly a coincidence? Or was it orchestrated? And yet, I distinctly remembered seeing her the day after our wedding. She looked perfectly fine, with no signs of having been in an accident. Maybe, to Susan, just one phone call could make Richard drop everything and rush to her side, no matter how urgent his current situation was. To women, fighting over a man was undignified, and besides, I knew I didn't stand a chance. It was pointless. I managed to stay calm and said, Richard, if you still have feelings for her, we should go our separate ways. Sophia, I never wanted things to turn out this way. Richard's voice trembled slightly, his eyes rimmed with red. He was usually so composed, rarely letting his emotions get the better of him. Just then, his phone rang. He glanced at it and moved to the window to answer. Sitting there in my hospital bed, I caught the sound of Susan's voice through the phone. "Richard, it hurts. It hurts so much." Susan seemed to be crying when Richard ended the call. His face was etched with worry. He looked at me, his expression torn. "I'm sorry, Sophia. I'll just go. I need to rest." I waved him away weakly, already knowing what he was about to say. "Get some rest. I'll come back to check on you later." He leaned in to kiss my cheek, but I instinctively pulled away. Richard hesitated, words hanging unspoken between us. After one last look, he left. We both knew who he was running to, what he was going to do. After Richard left, I stared blankly at the empty hospital room. Then I started laughing, but tears soon blurred my vision. Susan was still the one who mattered most to him, wasn't she, Richard? "Maybe it's time I let you go." I glanced down at the nightstand where a medical report lay carelessly tossed aside. If Richard had just taken one look, he would have known I was pregnant. But he didn't. Maybe this was fate's way of telling me something. Later that day, I left the hospital, and Aurora drove me home. Aurora gave me some final instructions before leaving. As I walked through the back garden and approached the front door of the villa, I saw Richard standing there, leaning against the wall with his legs crossed. Just seeing him standing there was enough to make my eyes gravitate towards him. I stared at those perfect features I once knew by heart, a strange sense of detachment washing over me, as if I were seeing him from a different lifetime. "Sophia, we need to talk." He held out his hand to me. "Richard, it seems like there's nothing left for us to talk about," I said with a wry smile. I took a deep breath, my heart aching so much I could barely breathe, mustering all my strength. I managed to say, "I know you can't get over Susan. I'm willing to get a divorce."